Welcome to Niche's Paintbrush. Today we're going to be talking about painting up a Space Wolf's Terminator. Pew, pew. Hello and welcome back. Here are the sub-assemblies for the Space Wolf's Terminator. Starting off with some charred brown. Gotta put that on the leather there. I also usually hit the bone pieces of the miniature with that charred brown as a great base. I find that it's a great base from Vallejo Come Color whenever doing either leather or whenever you're doing bone as well. Alright, next up we're going to do some black, and we just hit all the areas that need black or the ones that need metallic. I like to have a base coat of black underneath for the metallic color. Now, you may be wondering how I got all that blue. Well, I did a video on how to do the base coats for Space Wolves. I'll put a link up here. Next, we have some leather brown, and leather brown is going to add some scratches or dimensionality. I like dimensionality, if that is a word. I like adding dimensions to any kind of leathery surface, and I do like adding it to the bones as well, and just giving layer upon layer with different gradients, actually giving it a lot of character and depth. Next is some wolf gray, and I'm hitting that onto the bone area. Just in the highest highlights. I'm not really being too neat with it. Some of the stuff is going to be blended in with some bone white, just give it a stark starch look to the bone itself. So I'm not too worried about it, just trying to hit the highest highlights, and then I'm going over with bone white as well, just mixing in the areas, leaving the highest highlights, the more wolf gray, and the mid-tone being the bone white as well. So just switching back on the colors, and I do like playing around with things while I'm creating or painting. Like I'll try a new paint and I'll try a new color and see if it works for me. You know, sometimes it's a success, sometimes it's a failure. I'm always learning something no matter what. You know, you've got to paint bravely, you know, so if you make a mistake, oh well, you know, big deal. All right, going back to the leather and just adding some of that bone white to the leather itself, just the highest highlights. Next up, we got some black, and we're going to just do the rim here. I'm trying something new. Doing the rim here to the shoulder pauldron. And again, that charred brown is on the bone for the cross that's going to be on his pauldron as well. So I don't like to repeat myself too often when it comes to these tutorials. If I show you a method how to do bone, I'm not going to repeat myself. So now a mix of both pale burnt metal and gold to make this. Now I do like to mix the scale, the Vallejo metal colors to have different kind of colors that I create myself. Again, using a wet palette is great because once you're done, you can always go back to it even a week later. Now some game ink, and what I'm doing is just, again, trying something new. I just wanted to hit just a little bit of, like, almost give a wash to those crevices that are in the pauldron on the top. Something no other Space Wolf has. I just wanted to try it out. It came out all right. Flat flesh, just as a basis for the yellow. I'm trying new things with yellow. A lot of different recipes, so you're going to see me, you know, change up my recipe for yellow. But for this model and for the next model, I think it's just to hit the flat flesh first before I put on the yellow that I have. Next is some flat yellow from Vallejo Model Color. This, for me, maybe I got the bad batch here. It can get really chunky. You have to be very careful when you're using this color. Well, that's why I'm only just trying to glaze over the flesh with the yellow and slowly building it up. Make sure you wait until the paint is dry before you give out another layer and just build that up. All right, Inktense Blue from scale 75. I love their inks. Just trying something different with the leather there. Trying to get some shadows, differentiation between the bone and the leather. Just trying to get all the lowest recesses and building up some shadows with blue instead of my usual brown that I usually do. Now time for P3 Paints Bootstrap Leather. Now this is a unique color and I really like it. I do like P3 stuff. I don't have too much. I have the Troll Blood set. I wish they had like a complete set kind of thing that you can get the whole set, because you gotta buy all these mini sets, which drive me nuts. Alright, Dead White with some Flow Aid, and now I'm trying to do some edge highlighting. And I usually do edge highlighting with Flow Aid because I just want the paint to flow and wick off the brush. If not, there's so little paint on the tip of the brush that, or on the side of the brush, that it just doesn't come out. It dries before you actually get the opportunity to cover the entire surface area. Now the flow aid prevents that from happening, so this way you can actually keep painting and not have to worry so much about the paint drying. Now all the black areas, or black metal, that's what I call it, I always give it an edge highlight with a complete contrasted white. And it's a very, very thin line. Notice that I'm using the edge of the brush and not the tip of the brush. When you're doing edge highlights, use the edge of the brush, not the tip of the brush, and that is helpful. I do have a video about it. I can post it right here if you're interested in watching that. All right, next up, some dried blood, and then I'm going to add some Scarlet as a mid-tone when I'm doing his lenses here, then some red from Vallejo Game Ink, and finally some dead white just to see where the entrance and exit points for the light will be. And that's for a red lens. Let's move on to a blue lens. I'll start off with Ultramarine Blue for that mid-tone, some Sky Blue for some highlights or mid-highlights, blue straight Game Ink to blend them both together, dead white for the entrance and exits of the light itself. And I'm going to do a lens later on in this video, so you got to see exactly how I do lenses. Alright, some pale burnt metal is next, and I'm just giving that, I don't know what to call it, the cord that actually comes from the shoulder onto the power glove. I know I'm saying that wrong. Sorry about that. Power claw? No. Gosh, I forgot what it's called. But it's a power something for sure. Seraphim Sepia is going on to the bone on the pauldron. I'm coming back, and you notice that I go back and forth with some of these things. I just, wherever the wind blows, that's where it takes me when it comes to painting these things, really. If I'm painting one piece and I just got an anchor in for some Seraphim Sepia, I just go for it, right? And I just pull it on. Kind of try to build it some kind of rhyme or reason. I kind of like build in sub-assemblies, put one main piece like the legs, and try to build upon that, and then just like detail as I go. I think that's the only theme that I have throughout this. Alright, again, hitting all the bone areas, including the teeth that are hanging on. I guess they're wolf teeth, I'm not sure. Maybe they're just fangs from fallen brethren, and that you're paying respect to them. I have no idea. Or maybe it's one of those, I killed a Fenderson wolf because I had to survive, and I have his teeth, and I use everything from the wolf because I respect it. Kind of tribal kind of mentality there. But yep, Seraphim Sepia, general application throughout, which is the dealio. Really, really fun miniature to paint for these Terminators. So excited to get them on the field. Black base coat for the eyes. So now I'm going to get into the eyes and painting the eyes and how I do lenses. We'll get to that in just a bit. But I always start off with like a little black, so this way I can have shadows around. I want it dark, really, really dark inside the eyes, and then bring up the color slowly through contrast. Now, I saw his Power Fist. That's it, Power Fist. I got it, not Power Glove. Power Glove was a Nintendo thing, I think, back in the 90s. Alright, so his Power Fist seemed like, they didn't add enough contrast between the fingertips, so I just added some nun oil in between that and just like pin washed it. Be very careful not to spread it all over the place, and don't be careless. So some dead white for the base contrast for the eye center. Alright, so you have black, and you're going to put some white contrast right there. So in this way, the middle of the lens will be the brightest, while the edges of the lens will be the darkest, therefore bringing out some depth to that eye. Now time for the eye. We start off with some dry blood, right? And that's going to be a dark color, so it's going to be on top. You use a burgundy for that. A scarlet, which is a base red, really great. A red ink to tie both of those two colors together. And finally, the dead white, you put a dot on the top for the entry of the light, and maybe just like a little line on the bottom for the exit of the light. So the light comes in through the lens, right? And it has to escape somewhere, and it escapes through the bottom. When it comes onto the top, for jewels as well as lenses itself, the darkest point is where the light's coming through. Now you may not think that, wait, why is that so? Because if you ever look underneath the water, and watching light come in, right? Once it hits the water, it kind of refracts and kind of expands, right? And so the top of itself, the point where it enters would be the smallest, and on the bottom where it exits going to be the largest because it expands, right? So where the light's the most, the bottom is going to be actually brighter than the top where it enters, and that's sort of the dynamics when it comes to lenses itself. So I'm going to show you how I do the lenses. You can watch this while you watch me do it while I tell you a little bit of a history about the Wolfguard Terminators themselves. And just a little history about what I am painting. So every Space Wolf warrior dreams of a place in the Wolfguard. To be a member of this select company is to wield the very deadliest weapons of war. For a great company's armor, it's always open to the personal guard of its Wolf Lord. So do many Wolfguard choose to don suits of sacred Terminator armor, the most formidable personal plate available to the chapter's warriors. The actions of the mighty warriors can turn the tide of any war. Packs of Wolfguard Terminators form a spearhead of many Space Wolf attacks where they can scorn the foe's defenses, firepower, as they advance and tear the throat out of the enemy's battle line. On a rare occasion, the Great Company will armor all of its Wolfguard and commit them to a single war zone, deploying them as a hammer blow to crush all resistance. Now, I played these Terminators on the field against some Grey Knights, and let me tell you something. They did very, very well. Now, some of this is a dice game, Warhammer 40k. So it's a game of chance, but then again, you increase the chances of success by having greater armor, by taking units that have, a reasonable amount of cost for what you're getting, and then deploying them in such a manner in which you get the right location so you can do the optimal amount of damage. Now, it seems like a lot, but in a war you do have to strategize a bit, and you are a general, so you can out-strategize someone else. And then you were at the game of chance, because you never know what might happen, and that's when the dice come in. It was really fun. These Terminators kicked donkey. Let's just put it there. It kicked donkey, that's for sure. Now, don't go kicking donkeys. Donkeys are good animals. They scare me, but they're good animals. Only because, I grew up in New York City. I came close to a donkey once, and it hee-hawed and scared the life out of me. I don't know. I gotta get used to this. Alright, so the lenses itself, you're painting the darkest color on the top, like we said. The light's coming in on the top, right? Then you have your mid-tone right in the middle, right? And then you use your ink to blend it both in together, and then you put a white streak on the bottom and then a dot on the top, and that'll simulate the light on the top coming in and the light exiting on the bottom, again holding that gradient so this way it can actually get darker towards the bottom. Now, the top piece was interesting. I did the same kind of thing. Since it was a box, the top was a little burgundy-ish. Well, you can use any kind of darker red as a mid-tone red. I like to use ink to bind them together. You don't have to, that's a choice. The ink itself is reflective, so that'll help to actually identifying it as glass, because if it's glossy, it looks like glass. So that's why I like to use ink as well. Plus, the intensity ink it's what it says. It is the business, all right? So that is red, right? I've done FW inks, I've done Vallejo inks, I've done quite a few inks, and I'll tell you, intensity is the bomb.com if they still use that expression. Oh, wow. So, doing a Terminator head in this actual Terminator was kind of a speed build for me, because I'm doing the Get It Painted Challenge, the next New Year Get It Painted Challenge from Edic Beer. And, I kind of want to get this box done. It's been on my shelf for about a year. I'm done with it. I have to do. Must complete, So here it is. This is how I do lenses. Pretty cool, in my opinion. I think it came out well. All right, back with black. In the black piece here, what I'm doing is just getting the nose of it. Accidentally, I had some glue on my fingers and I touched its face whilst trying to set it in. So I figured I'd just paint the nose black. Oh well. You see, when accidents happen, you just make up for it. Okay, it's down for some dead white mixed with some bone white. And what you're going to do is you're just bringing out the teeth over here on this kind of necklace that is on the shoulder pole, right shoulder pauldron of the Terminator. There, I got it out. Huh. All right. Next up, some Seraphim Sepia right on the topmost parts of the bone. I kind of like to have that little contrast going on, a little bit of gradient going on, and you can go nuts with this stuff. But I like peanuts, so I'm going to consume them and not put them on my model. So don't go nuts with it. All right, Scarlet and Intense Red. So starting up with Scarlet and then glazing it over with Intense Red. And what I'm doing is the crystal. Again, the crystal itself, just like the light, just like doing the lenses, you kind of want to, you know, simulate a lens kind of thing and make it glossy. All right, some dead white. And when I'm doing some edge highlighting onto the gem itself, I don't know if it's completely focused here. I'm still getting used to this camera. There's a lot of things that I would like. I mean, I'd like a new lens so this way I can record from further away so I don't have this problem so much. But one day, maybe next year actually. All right, leather brown base coat for the red. So if you're going to paint red, I was told to put some leather brown or any kind of mid-tone brown before you paint red. So we'll try this again. I have different methodologies for painting red, and you're going to see me change up in the next tutorials coming up. Scarlet red and then Intense Red. So Scarlet Red just to bring out the base coat over that brown, and then Intense Red just to, you know, seal it in, seal the deal, buddy, and make sure that it's red. Now I'm not too crazy about how it came out, to be honest with you. I am trying to use there's some jet exhaust for the metal piece right here, the Gatling gun, and yeah, so I'm trying the new reds. I'm trying with Citadel. I've never done Citadel before, so I'm coming up with new red formulas. You can use whatever works for you, to be honest with you, if you can do a red. But some Bootstrap leather now for the leather kind of bracelet that's going around this Gatling gun, because you always put leather bracelets around Gatling guns. Go Space Wolves. Oh! I love this aesthetic. I mean, they're so fun. So much fun. There's so much adornment, so much to play. You can just lavish over it. All right, pale burnt metal, just there on the tips of your Gatling gun as well. I don't know what it's called officially. Some kind of cannon. All right. Now time for the blue. I'm going to do some game blue ink on the tips, just trying to get some yellow for the mid-tone for that. And again, some sepia. We're going for glazes here, glazing over the metal, and finally some black to simulate that this gun has been shot so many times, it's actually turning color. I like the effect, the way it came out. All right, time for some pinning. All right, so I usually use a Dremel tool. I'm going to start off with this pin vise. No, not pin vise. These, I guess it's called a pin vise. What is these called? The hand driller things. I think they're called pin vices. And I'm going to start it out. Now, if you don't start it off with one of these pin vices, and you do use a Dremel tool afterwards to complete the hole, then it's going to walk on you. In other words, the drill bit it's going to start moving, you know, left, right, up, down, you know, it's going to move around on you. You have more control with this, but after a while, you know, carpal tunnel and everything. So I'm going to go to the Dremel tool because it's just so much quicker. And I just hold it steady and ready for it. Oh yeah, it gets the job done. Oh yeah, I love it. Make sure you turn it off and it stops spinning before you put it down. There you go. All right, there's gonna be some plastic on that tip there, so you're gonna want to, you know, take your pointed metal file and kind of drill that out over there, and then kind of take off the plastic from the drill bit itself, because spinning so fast it starts melting onto the drill bit, and you want to take care of that for future use. All right, next up, some Liquitex. I got some modeling clay. I got some skulls from Green Stuff World. I have some skulls from Citadel skulls. I do have some basing materials, and that is just some gravel I found on the street. These skulls, man, these are awesome. These are really, really awesome. If you can get your hands on them, I love them. I decided to do some orc skulls on there, mix it up with the regular skulls, and it's really awesome. And I love bases with that, because it just seems like, I mean, if you're war and fighting constantly, there's going to be some, you know, skulls on the ground. I don't know. It just happens. Hey, where's your skull? Oh, I left it at home. Sorry. Here's another one on the floor. You can have that one. All right, anyway, speaking about the floor, I got this gravel that I picked up. And this gravel over here is actually just picked up from the street. I just saw some finely grind rock, and I just put it in that container, and I've had it for 2 years now. And there it is. I've done bases for that, and I actually done a tutorial for bases. If you want to check out the tutorial for these winter bases, you can check it out up here. What's wrong? All right, time for some corking right there. We put some cork in there and some modeling paste. All right, so synthetic primer. We're going to prime this up. I put it all together with some PVA glue. Nothing too serious there. Water down a little bit, let it dry completely. I do let it dry for 24 hours before I go back to it. Only because, well, you know, I do other things in paint, and yeah, I get back to things when it dries. All right, some coal gray. I like using the airbrush in this because it really, look at that transition. It looks beautiful. Now, how you can gently just bring it up, and you have complete control with the airbrush. No globbing of paint, no anything like that, and you're bringing up the color lightly. And look how it just keeps that zenithal transition throughout. I mean, if you don't have an airbrush, then I highly recommend one. Time for some wolf gray to just get some highlights here on the skull, just giving a differentiation from the platform in which the Terminator Space Wolf is, and just adding some color, and again, I'm using dimensionality as a word. The dimensionality to your bases. Again, having a lot of different layers, different colors, having visual interest is great. I don't want to go too far where it detracts from the miniature, but I do want to go far enough that it adds some variation and has you keep looking at the things. Like, look at the base. Is there something in there? Some Agrax Earth shades. Some people say don't airbrush any of those Citadel shades. Bull honky. I achieve a great effect using it. I just use it at very light coats. I don't saturate it. The second you saturate it, it's not going to work for you. But just like as a little glaze, it works so beautifully. Now for some Seraphim Sepia, and just got to add those browns in there. We have the earth shades, and now we're going to go for the browns again, adding another layer of color, another layer of interest, trying to bring your eyes in and really just, you know, revel in all the crevices and all the details and all the things that are popping out of that base. I do like the way that I actually created these snow bases, and I really think it adds character to the army. Again, I'm lifting up all the Space Wolves on these cork bases so they can match the height of the Primaris Marines, and it works out great. Some Drakenof Nightshade, because I like to add blue to mine, just for the icy world of Fenris, because that's where this is taking place, in my opinion. Very gravelly and with a lot of skulls everywhere. Yeah, there you go. It is a death world, so, you know, it's kind of tough living there. Tough living. Alrighty, so now from some Seraphim Sepia, I'm going to go in there with a brush, and what I'm doing is going into and getting the teeth and going into the skulls and just adding some brown into that as well, giving just another layer of color to it. And I didn't want to use the airbrush for that, because the airbrush is great for base and tonality like that, but you really have to use a brush to get in there. Next up, I actually create the snow. Again, snow's in the snow basing video that I posted up before. You can just check out how I did that. Basically, you have some PVA glue, you have some snow, you have some glitter, and some water. You kind of mix it up. There you go. You got some snow. Alright, I like these wire brand, very cheapo nails. I use them for pinning, I use them for sub-assemblies through cork. I really use them a lot. And use this kind of clippers and not your hobby clippers to clip anything that's strong like metal or anything like that. You will ruin your hobby clippers if you try to do it with that. So use some heavy duty. I think I bought both at Walmart. Now I'm just seating it in, and I am, like I did, as I just chipped a piece of the nail, and then I put it into the hole where it created with the Dremel tool, and then I just seated on top there where I have where I'm going to put the pin, and then I take a nail and I kind of just drive it through so I can hit the base so I can go all the way through. If not, when you're doing it this way through cork, it has a tendency of pushing back up, and you kind of like have your miniature levitate a little bit. It's weird. It just, you know, comes up on a stand. You don't want it to push back up, so you want to like pre-drill it or pre-hammer it or pre-nail it or something like that. You gotta take the nail, you gotta drive it through before you pin the model onto it. So this way the hole is already created, and it can easily just slip in and slip through. All right, now time for the glue. You don't need a whole lot, but you do need to cover the hole in there as well, because, you know, it's just gonna add that extra bond to it. And I do pin it because I paint the bases separately, and paint on plastic contact is not great. But if it's pinned, I have no problem with that miniature ever kind of falling off and deviating from what it's originally intended for. Well, this miniature is just about done. We do have to put on the base or paint the base around there, and I do like to paint the bases. I always used to paint them black, but ever since watching a video with Sam Lentz, I think it was on Tabletop Minions, and he said, you know, you want a different color because the darkest thing in your miniature you want to be on your miniature itself, not on your base. Now I'm going to do some Charred Stone, and that's what I used for my bases for my Space Wolf. Charred Stone seems like a great color. You can choose any color you would like. So this is going to terminate this Terminator. I hope you enjoyed. Peace. Well, there it is, all painted up. Termin's ready to go. Now, next time, I'm going to show you how to do a Space Wolves Terminator's captain. So if you liked this video, you found it useful, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush. Deuces!